Well, this is an honor. I'm here with Pastor Evans over here by the Community Baptist Church over by Oceana and Marie Curie, my old junior high school. Thank you so much for letting me get your time and talk. These are extraordinary times. So many issues on the table.
You know, the feelings right now during this time are all over the page. You're hopeful, you're scared, you're got anxiety. They're all over the page. But as a man of faith, what I will always say is, when I feel fear creeping in, I know it's time to feed my faith. Here at Community Baptist Church, just like everybody else, we're going through the effects of the pandemic. But even in the midst of that, we're experiencing an epidemic in the midst of a pandemic, if that's even possible. And so what I would encourage people to do is remember that God is still the judge of all. He's still the source of all hope. And we're leaning and depending on him as a community of faith here at Community Baptist Church.
Look, three places in the Bible, fear not, so I'm good with that. At the same time, the challenges are not small, and having to address them can be very stressful. I'm noticing on my social media the sensitivity, the volatility. Someone says something and boom, suddenly they go into some sort of argument. Councilman Vallone wrote a really nice thing that I just kind of shared, talking about this is a time for all of us to get together and to listen and to be understanding. And he kind of put out this call to action saying, everybody should stop with the vitriolic fighting and online and disparaging remarks and try to understand each other. But I'm not seeing as much of that happening as I'd like.
You're not going to see as much of that happening right now because I think, especially in the midst of this pandemic, everybody's kind of huddled on their side of the street and they're taking a very selfish perspective. Even in the midst of what you see going on now in the midst of riots, what you have is, Dr. King described this in 1968, you're having the voices of the unheard is now rising to the top.
Riots are socially destructive and self-defeating, but riots do not develop out of thin air. Certain conditions continue to exist in our society, which must be condemned as vigorously as we condemn riots. But in the final analysis, a riot is the language of the unheard.
And because we didn't learn lessons in 1968, we're now having to repeat the test.
So we didn't learn enough of the lessons then.
No, we didn't learn them. We still see some of the same things happening. The only difference is with innovation and technology, social media is recording everything now, and things can be broadcast to millions of people in the matter of seconds with the advent of a cell phone. But these are some perilous times we're living in, and I will still submit to everyone watching, if we don't learn the lesson in 2020, we'll repeat the test.
Forgive me for laughing, but we'd have to be pretty stupid. I mean, you look at the world, you look at how easily things could go in a positive, constructive direction, and especially now we're at this kind of simple crossroads. It seems like, here, that's the easier path to go. And now we have a high motivation to make sure we go in that right direction and go to learning and into the right direction. And Maya Angelou said, violence never did any good anywhere. All the people that I'm going around and showing are peacefully demonstrating, are getting along, and we're seeing it being done the right way. We still have to worry about this other faction, but I don't know how to reconcile what the looters are doing. And
as somebody who has such a tremendous platform, I'll tell you what you can do. You can make sure that we stay focused on the main issue. The main issue has to be the main issue. We could choose to talk about looting and rioting, or we could choose to talk about we had another incident where an unarmed black man can no longer go home to his family. And we've seen this too much. And so communities, I think, are in an uproar because now we had to worry, would we see an arrest? We then have to worry now, will we see a conviction? And then will there be any sort of penalty? It's going to be such a long process. But we've been here before. I mean, we could name countless names that this has happened, and it's so disturbing that we're continuing to repeat this test. So I would say you have one of the strongest platforms, keeping us focused on the main issue being the main issue. We had Colin Kaepernick, who chose to protest peacefully. As a matter of fact, he never said a word. In one football game, he sat down. But because he had a conversation with a veteran, the veteran told him it would be more respectful if you knelt. So he started kneeling during the national anthem. He knelt, never said a word, was never indignant about his protest, but we couldn't learn that lesson. And so now you have the voice of the unheard saying, if you didn't hear it this way, maybe you'll hear it this way.
I was out in L.A. During the Rodney King riots, and all of us were shocked when the verdict came in and those guys walked free. At the time, a lot of people they never spoke about the tasers. They talked about him being beaten, but you could see the little wires, and it never got on the news that they were talking about this new device with tasers. And I looked at that, and you look at the stuff that's reported and the stuff that's not reported, and my having been working at CBS News for so many years, I'm so sensitive to that. It's like, how come that didn't get reported? How come that did? I want to make sure that the press, and that's what I love what we're doing, and that I do love about the internet this far, is that no one can decide what you can say and what you can't say. We have some standards on our Facebook pages where we try to hold some civility. Topics are great. Civility takes a downturn when people get passionate and they want to start name calling and get angry with each other, so we have a tough time with that. But the voicing of as many different opinions and perspectives is part of what we want the most, and I think that that's part of what's going to help heal us.
I think so as well, and you have such an interesting perspective having spent some time on the West Coast. The Rodney King trial was so polarizing, and we all just thought a conviction had to be imminent. The only difference in that is at the end of that trial, even though we did not see justice, how many of us thought we would, Rodney King still got to go home to his family. In this case, George Floyd did not get that opportunity. And this makes it a much bigger deal. And we have to stay focused. No one, black, brown, blue, green, should have an encounter with those who are called to protect and serve, whatever that encounter is, and not be able to go home to their family. And we've got to get back focused on that issue.
Well, you're right on it. I'm loving you, Pastor Evans. How has this kind of changed the way you're addressing your congregation? Has it addressed and the way you're speaking to your congregation?
I pastor a predominantly African-American congregation, and I want to say predominantly. This church has roots in this community. As a matter of fact, this year we're celebrating 95 years here in the Bayside community. This conversation is quite difficult. I don't know if you know this or not, but this is breaking news. I'm African American.
Okay, you heard it here first.
I have an African American son. I have an African American wife. I pastor many African American families. And for those of us as men and women of faith that try to preach love and the ways of Christ, blessed are the peacemakers, it's very difficult to know that because of the color of my skin, I could not be behind my pulpit or not be in a church or not have a cross around my neck and be seen as antagonistic, be seen as a threat just because of the color of my skin. That's very hard to stomach and have those sort of conversations with members of my community.
Boy, I can understand that. Having grown up, I mentioned earlier, having grown up in Bayside, I never realized how blessed I was to grow up in the community I did and with the parents that I did. And I never liked the term colorblind because I liked the different colors. I liked going to classrooms that had all kinds of different nationalities and the variety that we have. There's no place in the world that has that. So I love that I grew up without any kind of prejudice or bias or anything racist at all. And I look back and I'm really thankful to my parents for it. When I went out to LA, it was the first time I heard DWB. Someone said, well, I got a DWB. And I was like, what is that? And they was like, driving while black. I was like, what are you talking about? And I really had to start looking and seeing stuff that I really hadn't been seeing before. and had to admit, I mean, I think that there's a discussion out there now about can white people see themselves and see racism in themselves, and there are pre-existing biases that we don't even think. Even me, who says that I just came up from a wonderful parents who had no racism at all, and Rodney Smith, one of my best friends that I went to school with, black guy over here, never thought about it, but I even have to look and say, okay, do I have any pre-existing biases myself? Can I be a better person myself by looking and seeing maybe I've got something that I don't recognize in myself that could be improved? I don't know how to do that, though. I'm trying my best to make sure that I give myself an upgrade and that we all evolve, because I think it's time for all of us to evolve.
You know, what's interesting, the process you're taking yourself through, literally everybody needs to do that. It's called self-examination. You know, can I see that in myself? And then after that, spend some time with different races, different cultures. We all have implicit biases. We all feel our way about our own communities and our families. And I really don't think that's anything wrong with that. You know, Queens recently was defined as the most diverse county in the nation. That's wonderful. That's great. But it's when our diversity is used as a tool to separate us and divide us and make us antagonistic against each other that it becomes a problem.
Socrates said that the unexamined life isn't worth living. And for all of us now, I think we have an opportunity to examine our own lives. You're doing a great job with everybody here, and I hope you won't mind. I'd love to come and join you.
I want you to come back. I want you to worship with us, pray with us. You'll hopefully experience something because of the power of God in this place that has nothing to do with the color of our skin, but has to do with God. And I think if we put the focus back on our faith, put the focus back on love in our community, we'll see a real change. But at this point in time, we have to remember that there's a piece of the community, there's a piece of the family that's hurting, and we can't ignore that.
I am so looking forward to coming back and hearing you, and hopefully do another one of these interviews with you. I can tell you one thing, even before I hear you come to your church, I can tell you one thing that I can feel right now. You can feel there is love in this building, and that's what this is all about. And it's wonderful being here with you. It feels wonderful. I'm looking forward to coming back and hearing you.
The great people of CBC would want me to tell you that here at CBC, we love God, we love people, and we love to serve. That's our motto here.
Thank you so much. We're going to come back and talk to Pastor Evans again, but really appreciate it, and it's a real pleasure, real honor. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.